Hey everybody, I am Tintin. That's Tin is in nasty, Tim is in murder. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday and a wonderful new year. I'm on my way out for the night, but thought before I would go, I would record a quick video. Tonight's topic came from a viewer, subscriber on the channel, and the question they asked was about faux queens, quote unquote. And, a faux queen being someone who is biologically female, who performs as a drag queen or in drag as a woman. And the question was about whether or not faux queens are culturally appropriative or appropriating queer culture. I guess ostensibly the assumption being that many or most faux queens are heterosexually identified or straight women, although I suppose they could also be queer women who are faux queens. Specifically, the question connected that with RuPaul's Drag U and the way that former contestants of RuPaul's Drag Race, on that show are dressing up biological women in drag. The question actually kind of threw me off at first because, to be honest, I'm more accustomed to thinking about whether or not drag itself is sort of appropriative, since with drag itself you usually have gay identified biological men, although obviously there are many trans performers in the drag community. But since drag is associated with gay men often who are performing as women, I've actually, I guess, been more accustomed to pondering the question of whether drag itself has misogynistic qualities or undertones. There's a whole, not all feminists by any means, but a particular feminist critique of drag as reinforcing misogyny by playing into these hyper feminine tropes that are potentially damaging to women, or making a mockery of women and femininity, or just the idea that as men we are able to step in and out of womanhood and femininity in this way that doesn't pose an ongoing identity on us that could lead to oppression in a patriarchal society. So I guess I would say that no. In most cases, I do not think that, quote unquote faux queens are appropriative in a damaging or problematic way. I think that the kind of drag that interests me the most is the kind that throws gender itself into question or shows the ways that we are all unconsciously performing and receiving other people's performance of gender daily by exaggerating different extremes of gender, whether that is femininity or masculinity, to show the constructedness of all genders. And I don't think that that type of drag is one that only LGBT or only gay men can perform by any means, because I think all of us, LGBT as well as straight, we are all held captive by those social constructs of gender and the binary between masculinity and femininity in some way. So I think exploring, a transgressive expression around those, there's rooms for all types in that. Obviously, there is a particular history to drag that has its liberatory and radical aspects, has its problematic aspects and troubling aspects, is complex and rich and wonderful to learn about and study, and that has taken place mostly in LGBT and queer communities. So if someone who is not a part of those communities is becoming a drag performer, I do think it, behooves them to know that history and be respectful of it. But I would say the same thing about a lot of LGBT and queer performers who have also not, introduced themselves to that history and those traditions. One of the faux queens who interests me the most that I've discovered, and one of the reasons that I chose tonight to take this topic on, was that earlier today I was watching Misty Eyes' interview with the faux queen Holly McGrail from San Francisco, who she met on the Drag Race cruise. It's a great interview, I'll link it, but I was really impressed with the way that Holly McGrail talked about her drag, and just encountering obstacles and resistance and shade from people who don't think that she should be doing drag, but the way that she thinks about drag. One of the things I really appreciated was she talked about going to some extreme with it, make it a performance, bring this element of extreme visual art or theatricality. Misty Eyes pointed out that the kind of drag that Holly McGrail performs is so drag, big and bold. She really throws gender into confusion, and when you see her, you see a drag queen. You don't see a glammed out woman, quote unquote. You see a performance artist, you see a character, you see a persona that really questions gender itself. And I think that's fascinating and very cool. So, all that said, I do think the phenomenon that occurs on RuPaul's Drag U is something slightly different, though. You know, the women on RuPaul's Drag U dress in drag once, they dress in drag that day. And I think that, you know, it's wonderful that they get to sort of dip their feet in and have fun with it. I think what's slightly more problematic about RuPaul's Drag U is actually, though, that there is this age old dynamic on it where the queer people, where the regular drag performers from Drag Race are really only there to serve as helpers to the usually heterosexual women, where the role of LGBT and queer people is to make straight people fabulous. And then Rue herself, her role on that show is just to, you know, kind of be this queer self-help coach to straight people find their bliss or whatever. You know, it's not about a mutually transformative experience. We don't see how working with the women affects the queens. It's really about everything the queens do for straight people. A lot of us have talked about how what we would love to see from Drag U, that what we think would be a lot more compelling to watch, would be newer, inexperienced queens, or, you know, queens that could use a little polish, getting makeovers from the more experienced queens from RuPaul's Drag Race. I think that would be like an awesome show. So that's all I have to say about that topic for today. Much love. Bye bye.